Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us in this webinar. My name is Andrew Townsend, and today we're going to be talking about common articulate storyline development mistakes. This webinar will be recorded so that you'll get a copy of it later. You can also come and visit our website where we'll be posting it next week. Today we have Amber Rodbill, one of our custom developers, with us today. Would you like to say hello, Amber?
Hello, thanks for coming.
If you guys have questions during this webinar, be ready to use the questions panel. It looks like we're getting a lot of check-ins from people. Amber, you're a popular person. Lots of people want your autograph and are excited to hear what you have to say today. So use the questions panel. We'll have people there to answer those questions, and periodically I'll be able to pull questions out and ask Amber directly from the questions panel. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and turn the time over to you, Amber.
All right, great. All right, well, thank you everyone for coming and joining us today. Today we're going to discuss some common mistakes that developers make, maybe due to complacency, or we've been in the job for a really long time and we get used to like our ways of doing it, or maybe we just started and we weren't really trained in a formal process with Storyline. So maybe we don't know the best practices or some tips that will really help us be more efficient. So kind of the point and key takeaway today is that at the end of this webinar, when you're doing your next project, you can set yourself up for success at the beginning of the project and start off really strong with some of these tips so that your process goes more efficiently and your project, you beat your timeline every time. All right, so let's get started. First, I'm going to ask you guys a question. To review or not to review? That is the question. Do you dive right in, or do you take the time to review your storyboard? So we're going to go ahead and put up a poll here for you so that you can answer this and give us a little insight into what you do.
All right, so we'll launch this poll. Go ahead and just click for an answer. We're getting a lot of responses coming in. About 30% of you have voted. We'll keep it open for a little while here. I'd like to see a lot of votes. We're getting actually, let me give you some early reports here, Amber. Looks like about 70% of people are saying that they spend 20 minutes plus taking notes, making notes. The next highest is 20 minutes at 15 minutes tops. I'll be closing this poll. I'll give you guys 5 more seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, let's look at those results. So yeah, it looks like we've got a lot of note takers, a lot of storyboard planners, and reviewers.
That's great. Actually, that is exactly what you should be doing. I think especially a lot of new developers tend to kind of want to skip this step because we just want to like dive right in and get started. And in the end, we're really, instead of taking that, good solid hour to spend on our content and to fully understand our content, we lose that. And then all along the way, we have question after question, and we're kind of peppering our IDs with questions instead of up front doing it and understanding it from the start. So always take the time to review your storyboard. I personally will take a storyboard and I will mark off an hour just to sit there, read through absolutely every part of it, understand it, if there's any kind of gamification, understand the logic of that, and then I like to take notes about any questions that I have for my ID so that I can give my ID a full page of questions up front and I get all those answers back at one time. And I understand from the start how my course is supposed to function. And that really helps me be able to explain it better to everyone involved. So that's very important to do. It makes inconsistencies less frequent, and any kind of questions that you have, it can really eliminate those from the start with the ID. And like maybe something can't function that way in Storyline. So instead, it really allows you to address those up front. All right, so number 2, the next thing I find that is a mistake that we all can make is that we don't plan our course up front. So what does this mean? This means that typically what I do is I create my scenes and all my menu and all my module information, everything up front. My whole navigation is done. I have every slide that I'm going to use in place. So if there's a slide in the storyboard that I know I'm going to need in my course, it's already in there and it's titled. So also another thing that I always do is make sure that you navigate at a scene level versus a slide level. So when it says jump to the next slide, instead you're going to always say jump to the next scene. If you have to, the client says, hey, you know, I have to switch these slides around, or I don't think I want to start with that. You're reordering, instead of having to change all your triggers or the names of things, you are going at a scene level, so it really makes zero difference. I also create all my custom branching up front, different paths or versions that I know I'm going to need based on audience type. I go ahead and set those up. I set my variables up for those. Everything is done so that in the end, my goal is to have all these things done in the beginning, so I'm just popping in content. So now I'm going to switch over here to Storyline and kind of just show you in Story View what I mean. As you see, I always set up, you know, my welcome screen, my menu slides are already there, and all my scenes are already there. Already set up, ready to go, already named. And like I said, if I'm really feeling ambitious, I will go ahead and have all my slides in there as well. Just blank slides. It kind of makes me feel like I've accomplished something too when I see that all those slides in the first module are finished, and I'm like, all right, then I can go on to the next one. All right, so now back to PowerPoint. So make sure you always plan your course in Storyline. Now, the next thing that I know I do this more often than not. I don't always know my look and feel. So I will dive right in. I'll be like, oh, the PowerPoint looks great. I'm sure that's the font that they're using. I'm sure those are the colors that the client is using, and I will go right to it. And that oftentimes when I get to a certain point, I realize, oh, well, that wasn't the client font. And, oh, that's not the preferred color. It's close, but not exact. So what I will end up doing is having to change everything. So that happened to me a couple times in a row, and I was like, all right, enough's enough. That is a waste of time. So what I started to do is for every client, I create a theme. So let's go in here. And when we go over to your design view here, you go over to colors, and you can create your new theme colors. And then this is where I will get from the client their exact colors. I'll pop them in as my accents, as my custom colors, and I will save it with that client's name, so client name. This is great because when I pass it to another developer, if I need a hand or maybe there's a second module or something like that, they already have the theme as well. So they don't even have to worry about that. They know that from the start it's set up properly. This is also great when you're utilizing the built-in storyline features, like their buttons or things like that if you're utilizing, because it already puts the client's colors in those buttons and in those slider colors. So it really helps you out to move a little faster if all the client's colors are in a theme up front. So I always do that from the start now with every client, and that really makes me go on and work a lot faster, I feel like. And again, it's great for sharing between developers. All right, so now I'm going to ask you another question. So we're going to do another poll, and it's about our master slides. How do you utilize your master slides?
So go ahead again, just click on the answer that you support here. So we've got, how do you utilize master slides? Not at all. What's the point? If you don't see a point in master slides, or here and there for the main template screens, for the main screens, quizzing and large background photos, where every slide has its own master. We're getting a good response. Looking at these early responses here, a good chunk of people, a little bit over half of them, are using them for the main screens, quizzing, and large background photos. I'm also seeing about a quarter of people saying that they're using them here and there for the main template screens. I'll go ahead and give you guys 5 more seconds. 3, 2, 1. Here we go, and here's those results. So again, a little over half are using the main screens, using the master slides for the main screens, quizzing in large backgrounds, and then here and there for template screens.
All right, so that's fairly consistent, but I know we've all received those storyline files that are like massive, like beyond massive. And it takes us like 10 minutes to open them, 20 minutes to publish them, and you're like, well, why is that? It's because they didn't utilize master slides. Not only does it slow down your overall development and every step in your development process, it slows it down for other people and for your client when they receive your file. So I found that taking the time, some people are afraid to take the time to sit there and create all their master slides because they're afraid that, well, it might change as I'm getting into this and developing it. But I very rarely now, I create my master slides and they stick. That is what I use, and I do not deviate. I might deviate on some of the screens, but nothing major. And I've found that putting large background photos in a master slide really saves your overall speed of your course, especially if you have a really large compliance course or something like that, that those large photos are really going to slow you down. So we are going to take a moment here and talk about our master and talk about how easy it is to set one up. So it's very simple. When we go into Storyline, you just simply go to Slide Master and you can easily add a new one, and you can make custom masters, and it's very simple. And I usually start with about 6 of them, and again, I've already reviewed my storyboard, so I already know what I need it to look like. And if I have about 6, I've got plenty of different backgrounds, different transitions, and different ways I can present it. One of the most common things that I've always found was really, really funny is that I will get this course that looks absolutely beautiful, and it has been designed perfectly, and then I will get to the quiz section, and your feedback master is still the same built-in storyline master. So I think that some people, maybe they don't know they can change this, or they forget to change it because it's the last thing that you're thinking about in your course. But always go in, and even if it's something simple, I would change your feedback master just from a design perspective as well, to make your courses really look custom and feel custom. So that's very simple to do. You just go to View, and then you go to Feedback Master, and you can swap that out. You have an incorrect and a correct option there. Alrighty, so moving right along here. Format Painter. One major mistake I find that a lot of developers do not use the Format Painter. And this always really surprises me, because for me, it saves me a great deal of time. So I've talked to different people, and I've asked them, I'm like, why don't you use the Format Painter? And I think they're either afraid of it, or they don't really understand how it's used, or how it can really help them and speed up their development time. So we're going to take a quick look. We are going to go into Storyline, and I have here, first let's take a look at this one. So here we have normal text. We maybe imported some of it in from Microsoft Word or PowerPoint or whatever. And so we know how we want it to look up here. And then we have down here how it came across and came in. So it's so simple. You just click this first one, and you click Format Painter, and all you do is click your next box, and voila, you have it matched up. And you have to click it each time, which is kind of annoying sometimes, but then you have it, and your text is then always going to be consistent. And sometimes I just do this throughout my course just because every now and then Storyline just decides to change it up on me, and all of a sudden the font is not what I thought it should be. And another thing to mention with that is that when you are creating your themes up front, go ahead and put in your client's font and create your theme fonts as well. And that way, every time you open that client file, that font will already be defaulted as that client's font, which is kind of nice because then you don't get into it, especially on your layers. Sometimes it'll automatically change to a different font. And then you have your course looking great, but then when people go into your layers, the font has changed. And sometimes when we're so busy, we don't even notice. So take some time to play around with your format painter, but I really enjoy using it. One thing that I like to do is when I have created, I always create, and we'll talk about this in a minute, my states up front. So let's say that I create a state, and this state is going to be my normal, hover, selected, and visited for anything in my project because I want it all to be consistent, so I set these up front. So I can copy this, and then I could take it over here and go over here, and I could paste it, and I say, okay, well, maybe I want to use this computer as a button, or maybe I'm going to have 3 of them across the screen with different content, but I want to make sure my states stay consistent. Again, you can use your format painter, click on it, and you can actually click on pictures as well, and it changes your backgrounds to the exact same as your buttons. So it's a really nice feature. I've found a lot of great ways to utilize it, especially when in photos you'll have, for instance, I have here, and I'm like, all right, the client has decided that they now want to change how that looks, or change, maybe they were, in this example, I was giving them 10 points for answering correctly, and maybe that's going to change. Well, I don't want to have to go through each of these people and do that. So what I do is I simply click it, hit my format painter, and select them, and there we go. It's already changed on the next guy and changed on the next girl, saving me a lot of steps versus going in and going through each one of those states again. So don't be afraid to use your format painter. It will help you a lot. It's great for speed. It keeps your course very consistent. And again, I use it all the time for my states so that I never ever create more than 1 state at the beginning of my course, and then I utilize it the rest of the way through, which saves me a lot of time. All right, so the next kind of mistake that I find that some people make is not worrying about alignment. And this, I think, is, I don't know, I worked in printing for a long time, and so it was always, you know, you better have this gap around your text at all times. And so it drives me nuts when I will see the text going off the screen or right to the edge of the screen. So alignment really does matter. Oh, look, it says it doesn't matter, but it does. It matters a lot, but it is very important to do it in kind of a smart way and utilize Storyline's built-in features to do that. So you always want to keep an outer edge and use your Storyline grids and guides, and I personally always change my grid settings. So I'm going to create a new slide here, and we're going to go up here to view, and it's so easy. You just hit grid lines and guides, and there they are. So then if you want to properly align things on your page, you can go ahead and create a new guide, and you do that by selecting the control key and just taking your mouse and hovering over an existing guide, and then you can create as many as you want. That way you know your outer edges, and you can put guides for them so that your text never goes off of your screen, and you can also maybe you have a bunch of icons that you need to keep in alignment. You can do that as well. So now another thing with this is that One thing that I like about Captivate is that I can hit my shift button and all of a sudden my image or whatever moves across the screen really quickly. Well, Storyline is a little backwards from that. So instead, we go in here to grids and guides, and we can set our spacing to like, I don't know, like 20. And that way my image is going to move across the screen at all times really quickly. But if I want to slow it down and to go 1 pixel at a time, all I have to do then is hit my control key while I'm moving it with the arrow, and it'll go 1 pixel at a time. But for me, I'm always in a hurry, so I always keep my grid spacing at like 20 or 30 so that my images can go quickly across the screen where I need them to be when I've duplicated them. And then if I need to get it just right, I will use my control key to kind of 1 pixel at a time nudge it to the exact position that it needs to be in. So I think by not using your grid lines and guides, you're making a big mistake, because no one by sight can get it exactly right. So to always make sure you're as close to perfect as you can be, it's really good to utilize them. All right, so next we are going to have another question. The question is, when do you make your buttons? Do you make them as you go because you figure out how you're going to need them? Do you make them up front, or a little of both? So let's do that poll.
All right, so there's the poll. Go ahead and vote. While they're voting here, Amber, we've had a few questions come in that I think you can answer here. The first one is, can you remind us what version of Storyline you're using or showing today?
Today I am showing, this is Storyline 2, but your functionality in 3 and 360 is going to be almost identical, and it's definitely going to be identical for everything I've shown you here today.
Okay, great. Another question, oh, this was actually a suggestion. Someone says another way to deal with the formatting, if you double click on Format Painter the first time, then it will keep the Format Painter until you unclick it, so that you can add the format to multiple text boxes or objects without having to re-click Format Painter in between each one. So that's another way to work a little bit faster.
Absolutely.
Okay, so it looks like we've got a good chunk of people voting. I'll give you 5 more seconds. 3, 2, 1, and let's look at those results. All right, here's those results. So there's a little bit of both, is definitely more than half of you, and then there's more than a quarter of you saying that you do it as you go. So there's people of all ranges here. Go ahead and hide this poll, and let me ask you another question here, one more question. This goes back to the very beginning before we move on. All the way back to dealing with storyboarding and such. What if the case is that your ID and developer are the same person? Do you have a process for dealing with storyboarding in that way?
I actually work as an ID and developer a lot of times, and for me, that's my preferred process, because I really, when I'm doing the ID, I already know how I'm going to develop it in the background, and I know not to create anything that I can't develop in Storyline. So I think for me, for efficiency, what I usually do is, if my client will let me, I would not go into a storyboard at all. I would go direct to Storyline. And as I am reading through the content, put it right in there into my slides and set it all up like that. And then I use my Storyline file that is not working as far as any kind of interactivity or anything like that yet, but all the content's where it's going to be, and it has a little note maybe saying that this is going to function like this is what your buttons are going to look like, and I send that to the client for their kind of storyboard approval, and that allows them to really understand where I'm going, and I think that's more efficient for me than going and putting it into PowerPoint when I'm just going to take it again and put it in Storyline. So I think going direct to storyline can be an efficient process if you can do it that way.
Okay, great. That's all the questions we'll take for now. I'll come back with more questions.
Okay. All right. So when do we make our buttons? Okay. So for me, I make my buttons all up front. And I know you're like, well, how are you going to know if you're going to need a submit button or if you're going to need, you know, maybe a little X icon or whatever. But I found that if I don't, and this is me, then my buttons sometimes will end up being squared off, sometimes they will be rounded, sometimes it'll just be an icon. So my consistency goes out the door if I don't do it up front. So I find that it's very easy. I personally don't use Storyline's built-in buttons like ever. I usually always create my buttons simply with a smart shape. So I will go in, and if I decide that, you know, I'm going to have squared off buttons, then I'll do that, or rounded, or whatever. And then sometimes my client has, like this client, I don't know how well you can see this, but it was more like a raggedy edge button. And again, though, I still used a shape, and I then formatted the shape with a picture. And that allowed me to then, as I go through, it's going to always be consistent. I always have like this extra slide in my project that has all my buttons and all the things I'm commonly going to use so that I can go in at any time and grab it and pull it onto this slide and go over and copy it and pull it onto this slide. So because we don't always know if we're going to have a need for a submit button or a custom continue button or whatever. So it allows for me to have them all at my fingertips, and I'm never creating then as I go. I already have all that finished so that when I'm actually developing, I am just focusing on that slide and the elements on that slide, and I have all these other things already done. And for me, that really speeds me up. So yes, your buttons should all match each other. You should not have different styles throughout your course. And I find that a lot of great courses, and granted, I guess because I'm a developer, I'll go through and I'll be like, oh, it's a pet peeve. I'll see them change here and there, and I'm like, oh man. So, you know, maybe for the average person it doesn't matter, but I think all your buttons should match. And I think it's very easy to do them up front, and I think that will make you more efficient to do it that way. All right, the next thing I do is always my states are done up front. And again, this is for consistency as well. I have known a lot of developers who they will sit there and look at a slide for, you know, 15, 20 minutes creating all new states and making each page different. I tend to take the approach that I set my states up front. I have my color theme. I have everything I need. I even set, like, if I know I'm going to have maybe a correct or incorrect, I set those all up front. That way I already have planned all that out. And when I'm actually just working on my screen, all I'm doing is using my format painter to apply those states to the different elements on my screen, which this will again end up making you a lot faster because you're not sitting there and overdeveloping every single slide. You've already from the start created your whole theme, and you're then just applying it throughout where it needs to be applied. So that's very important, and I think with this group we probably all know how to create states, but it's very simple. You simply click your object and you can edit your states and add new ones. Now I will say that sometimes, especially when you're using like custom triggers, maybe you're going to need to have a state that says like just like a custom state, because in your content there's something that deviates a little bit for that screen. So it's very easy. I still use the same kind of image from the front, copy it over, and then I just add that extra state. but I only add that extra state to one of the items on that screen and then use my format painter to apply it to all. So again, I think these are just ways to make yourself more efficient in everything you do, and while being efficient, it keeps your consistency and your design very solid as well. Alrighty, now, next, custom or in-the-box functionality. Always ask yourself, does Storyline already have this built for me? This is something that really, really drives me up the wall. Because I will get a course and someone has created a custom drag and drop. And sometimes it needs special functionality, I understand that. But most of the time, they've created this custom drag and drop and probably spent an hour or two doing so when they could have taken 10 minutes to use the in-the-box functionality and to simply say, okay, here are my elements, and I'm simply going to convert to freeform, make it a drag and drop, and you're done. So always ask yourself, okay, before I look at this storyboard and I'm understanding how it works and everything, and I could create 100 triggers to make this work, obviously, but that's going to slow down my course. If somebody accidentally, the client or another developer, deletes even one of those triggers out by accident, they've just broken the course. And so instead, I always try to utilize as much custom or as much in-the-box storyline functionality. Now, there are times when I use plenty of custom functionality because we're doing games or things that require us to do so. But for your everyday things, using the in-the-box functionality is going to speed up you and it's going to speed up your course. And sometimes even you can do a little bit of both. So you can use the in-the-box functionality, and instead of adding 100 triggers to have made it all custom, you add maybe 4 or 5 to that screen that allows you to make that in-the-box functionality, maybe give feedback in a custom way, or maybe provide a little difference, but it's not fully custom. I find that like this really speeds me up to always ask myself, has Storyline already helped me out with this? Have they already created things that will make me be able to develop this faster? So again, you know, by always doing every slide custom, you're allowing yourself that you're going to have so many triggers that are going to slow you down. It's going to take you longer to develop your course, and your course may be more likely to break. And maybe not by you, but by your client or another developer. Especially if you know that you're going to have courses that you're going to be building, maybe 5 or 6 courses for the same client. You want to be able to pass these courses to another developer to work on module 2 or 3 or 4 without completely, everybody's at different levels, completely stumping them and then being like, oh, now I've got to learn what each one of these triggers means. So it's just something to think about. You know, I know we have different level courses that we work on, but you know, for your simple level 1 and level 2 courses, you can do a lot with the in-the-box functionality of Storyline. All right, now this one is my last kind of mistake and pet peeve, and I was looking online and doing some research of like what are the most commonly seen development mistakes, and this really made me laugh because I know that, you know, how many times have I gotten my fingers smacked for doing it, and so I thought we would end with this. One of the most commonly seen development mistakes is the next button on your last slide. So always try to remember your last slide, take that next button off. And now that I'm really conscious of it because I read that online, now I seem to never forget, but it really made me laugh that that was one of the most common development mistakes. So just something to think about. And do we have any other questions?
Yeah, we've got a few more questions here. Let's take this one first. well, this is more of a suggestion. So Sandra, when it came to creating your buttons all at once, said that she says, I like to create a resource slide or scene that contains the formatted buttons or objects I'll need throughout the module. Have you ever tried something like that?
That's exactly what I do. I have my extra slide over that's not part of my navigation, and it has all my elements that I might need, my states, my buttons, and that way I can just grab them and bring them in. And another point with that is that you can also share that within your project. So maybe you have two clients that have a very similar look and feel, or very similar, or maybe doing level 1 courses for them. We already have that resource slide created, so we've just saved ourselves another step by copying that into our current project.
Awesome. Melanie says, I'm not very happy with Storyline's default check marks. I see you have one in your visited state. Do you use the Storyline check mark or import one from another program?
I do not use their check mark. We usually will use Font Awesome. Has a really nice check mark that has a circle around it, and what's nice about it is we can utilize it as a font. You got to be careful with that because not everybody has that font. So you can also go online, and there's a website that will change all your Font Awesome fonts into PNGs for you, so that you can download them into your projects. So again, what I do is I have a folder in my documents folder that are just resources that I commonly use, and those are all my PNGs of like a correct check mark or a X to close a window, because I don't like Storylines icons for that either, although 360 does have some better ones that you can utilize.
Okay, great. Another question, going back a little bit back to the Format Painter. Carol asks, why didn't the Format Painter copy the bullet and indent spacing so that it matched the original? So this was from about 15 minutes ago. You might have to scroll back a touch.
So Storyline, I do have to say, it has its moments of glitchiness, okay? So what I'm pretty sure, if I select this then and I just hit this again, there you go. So something about Storyline bullets is that they don't always carry over your spacing, but all you have to do is select it and then select your bullets up here and select them again, and then automatically it goes back to what you had. So yes, it's an extra step, but I've only found that with the bullets. I think it's just one of the glitches that I've kind of learned that, oh, that's going to happen, so now I just need to double click this twice. So that's how I get around that. Someone else may have a better suggestion, but I have found with bullets, Storyline is pretty inconsistent on when it decides to keep my spacing and when it doesn't.
Okay, another question. Is there a shortcut for nudging images?
So yes, you hit Control, the Control button, and your arrows, and you have to actually select the box, and it'll move them 1 pixel at a time. Whereas if you've set it to, like I think I had set it to 20 here, it's going to move them 20 pixels at a time. But just to nudge it, see how it's going really slow here? Because I'm just nudging it up and down by holding the Control button down and using my arrow buttons on my keyboard.
And that's pixel by pixel. Okay.
Pixel by pixel.
So another problem, a common problem people are having, are they're accidentally dragging or bumping their guidelines. Is there a way to lock your grid lines?
So you can't really move your grid lines unless you're holding your Control button down. Usually, I guess if you really click on it, I've not ran into that problem. I don't know if you can lock them or not. That's a great question. We can get you an answer for that. I've never locked mine. But yes, I can see that that would be very frustrating.
One of
Um,
our other experts, just Taylor, piped in and said there's currently not a way to lock your grid lines, but Articulate has said that that'll come out in the future.
yeah,
So I guess the best advice is to be careful.
yeah, exactly.
Let's see. Looks like that's all the questions that we're getting here. Um, so there's a few complaints about Storyline's default buttons. I know that eLearning Brothers, we've got a lot of buttons available through our button packs. Are these easily imported into Storyline?
Absolutely. In fact, I utilize a lot of the button packs and our cutout people because, again, that makes my entire development process so much faster. So the buttons are great because then, from a design perspective, I don't even have to wonder, do they look good? Because I know that they look great. So I like to utilize those a lot. And then I get to be a little less creative, which can be good.
Saves you a little bit of time.
That's
Well,
right.
that's great. Those are all the questions that we're going to take now. Amber, if you wouldn't mind showing one more slide for me.
Absolutely. Right on.
So what we've got here, Amber showed you guys some of our cutout people. We've got thousands of cutout people, and a large chunk of them are available for free. So all of the cutout people that you saw that she used today are free. I'll send everybody that's on this webinar an email in the next, I would say probably the next 2 hours, 2 or 3 hours, and it'll have a link that goes to those free cutout people. Also, like I introduced her at the beginning, Amber is one of our custom developers. They do amazing stuff. If you want to see some of what the custom development team does, I'll include a link to some of their award-winning custom work that we've done in Storyline for our clients, and it's really cool for you to see, and maybe get some ideas or tips from there. So yeah, be checking for that email in the next few hours. Hopefully all this made sense to you and you didn't miss anything. If you did miss anything, or if you want some one-on-one time to talk about anything that was in this presentation, if you asked a question, I'm seeing a lot of questions here. If you asked a question that didn't get answered, I apologize. We are running out of time, but call us. Call us and we'd be happy to answer your questions. You can reach us at eLearning Brothers on our website. I'm sorry, not our website. Email us at support@elearningbrothers.com. You can schedule some one-on-one time there as well. So yeah, be looking for that email. I'll send out all of this information. Thanks again, Amber, for joining us. This was great. We've had a lot of positive comments and questions. We've hopefully been able to get all of you set up for success in the future. Thanks, and hopefully you'll join us next time. Thanks, Amber.
Thanks.